It's my nerd world, and welcome to it. I'm your host, Jon Justice. Huge show this weekend, and I was not expecting that. So, first off, I'm fighting a really bad cold. So if I sound a little nasally, or maybe I don't have quite as much energy as I normally do, that would be the reason why. And I was actually going to wait another day to do the podcast, but there's so much stuff to cover out of San Diego Comic-Con, I simply couldn't make you wait any longer. So, what do we got going on this week? Got a little Benioff and Weiss news. We'll talk about those mysterious Force Flash fights. I had a bit of an epiphany this week. Lots of talk about Sith Troopers at San Diego Comic-Con. Confirmation of Poe's new X-Wing in The Rise of Skywalker. We have a new First Order TIE Fighter we'll talk about. New comic books coming to the lead-up of The Rise of Skywalker. And a whole heck of a lot more. So, let's not waste any more time and get right into it for this week. One thing before we get started, I want to let you know that my second book in my space opera trilogy storyline, Embark, right? The second book is right around the corner. And I want to encourage you to join the mailing list by emailing me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. If you're not already on the mailing list, the only emails you will get from me will either be in regards to the book release, price specials, how you can purchase it before anybody else, and also news relating to the podcast. So join the My Nerd World mailing list. You will not be spammed, I promise. All you got to do is email talkshownerd@gmail.com.
We've passed on all we know. 1,000 generations live in you now. But this is your fight. We'll always be with you. No one's ever really gone.
Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you? I'm no one. There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you.
My Nerd World.
Just let it in.
I'm so glad you're with the show again this week. I am your host, Jon Justice, and like I said, I am rather under the weather. I'm fighting a rather nasty cold, so if I sound a little off this week, that's the reason why. But I didn't want to take a week off because we have so much to get to of information about The Rise of Skywalker coming out of San Diego Comic-Con that I just didn't want to delay. I was that excited. So I fully intend to record the podcast however long it takes, and then I'm probably just going to go and pass out for the rest of the day and then wake up and watch more Star Wars, which is what I have been doing in trying to make myself feel better. And I have some comments about that, too. I did some Star Wars watching, and once again, watching some of these films, they bring out new things, new parallels, new comparisons, and so I'll share that with you at the end of the podcast before we get to listener feedback, which, by the way, got spicy this week. There's some people fired up in listener feedback. So that'll be interesting once we get to it. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right to the news coming out of San Diego Comic-Con because there is a lot of it. Going into the show, let me tell you a couple of interesting things that we'll be doing through the show this week. You've probably heard me talk about the all-new social networking app, Blaster. Okay? If you haven't, a real quick description. Blaster is basically audio Twitter. It's a brand new app. It's available in the App Store for iPhones currently. I believe the Android version is being worked on. If you go to the App Store and you download and you search for Blaster app, you'll find it. You can also go to theblasterapp.com and get information there. They were having some major bugs with the app, but they fixed it. and it's working perfectly right now. I have been using Blaster a lot this week, as this news coming out of San Diego Comic-Con has been breaking over the course of the past few days. I've been going on Blaster and recording little commentaries about these particular news items. So, because I'm not feeling well, what I'm going to be doing is, one of the options on Blaster is once you record an audio blast, they call them blasts like a tweet, you put the audio up, it's on your timeline, it's on your own page, it's on your regular timeline, and then you can share it over to Twitter. So if you follow me on Twitter at Jon Justice or at @MyNerdWorld, you probably have seen some postings saying, hey, click this link and hear my commentary about the TIE Dagger, which we'll get to. So what I'll be doing on the show this week is, the app allows you to forward the audio on. So I emailed myself the audio from my blast. I'll be sharing those with you on the show. This is the only time I'm going to do it, just for this week, because I prefer to do the commentary during the show when I'm recording it. But because I'm not feeling well and I have several minutes about 3 particular items that I recorded blasts about, I figured this would be a good way to sort of help the Blaster guys promote their app while at the same time providing content. So some of the audio you'll hear on the show today, and I will be previewing it as such. Hey, this was a blast that I recorded talking about the Force flash fights, and then I'll give commentary around that. So again, just something I'll be doing this week on the show. I would really encourage you, if you like this show and you like the commentary that you hear, there's going to be a lot of additional commentary from me on a whole host of things on Blaster and on Twitter. I've put up reviews for Lion King this week. I've put up reviews for that nightmare fuel of a Cats trailer. Thoughts about the new Top Gun Maverick trailer. That's all on my Blaster feed and up on Twitter. So it's free. Go download it for your phone, and then follow me, Jon Justice, and My Nerd World on Blaster, and you can hear those audio clips. And again, we'll share some of those that I recorded earlier in the week. All right, let's start off with this piece of information, and this was kind of going to be one of the bigger news items, even though it's not really all that Star Wars-y, and I'll explain. But then so much other information came out that this is now completely secondary material. But I'm going to share it with you anyways, because it was on the rundown for the show this week. The Game of Thrones creators changed their mind about coming to San Diego Comic-Con. When the schedule came out for Comic-Con this weekend, fans were excited and surprised to see that the producers of David Benioff and D.B. Weiss' names were on the list of attendees for the show's Hall H panel. The showrunners have been very much off the grid ever since Game of Thrones finished, probably working, according to this article here from Germain Lucier, probably working on their upcoming Star Wars movies, and haven't answered many of the many burning questions that fans have about how it all ended. So their appearance at Comic-Con was a huge point of interest. Then on Twitter Thursday, HBO revealed that there had been a few changes to the original lineup, and it turns out that Benioff and Weiss would not be appearing. Gizmodo contacted HBO about the change, and a representative said the production and scheduling conflicts forced the pair to remove themselves from the panel. And as Germain goes on to say, that could very well be the case, but many fans are sure to see this as the pair dodging possible criticism or venom that their choices in the final season may have created. The truth is, though, even if fans don't like what happened at the end of Game of Thrones, odds are that everyone on that panel is sure to get a rousing ovation when they take the stage, and that would have included Benioff and Weiss. So I had this wacky theory, which I don't think is at all true whatsoever. But I had this wacky theory that Star Wars, or that, let me rephrase, Lucasfilm was going to sneak in a Star Wars movie at the end of last year. I even was forming a theory that what if those ridiculous Reddit rumors that were going around that Episode 9 was going to be split into 2 parts actually came true, and they didn't tell us. And a big secret of this film was that this was going to be part 1 of a part 2, and they were going to release another Star Wars movie at the end of next year. I know it's crazy, and I don't believe it, but that was something that I was playing with in my mind. Looking at the Disney release schedule, though, that doesn't even seem to be possible. We've got West Side Story coming out December 18th of 2020, and then they have Cruella opening up on December 23rd. I doubt that Disney would counter-program any major Star Wars release with one of their own properties. And of course, there's been no announcement, no indication that's going to be the case. And all of the conversation around The Rise of Skywalker has been that this movie that comes out in December is the last and final one. This was just something that I was entertaining because there is such a gap between when The Rise of Skywalker comes out and then the next film, which comes out, another 2 years after that or whatever? And we have Star Wars Celebration next year. So I'm dismissing that. I'm not going with that. That was just something that popped into my head when I read the D.B. Weiss and the Benioff and Weiss story about them not attending. I got my gears spinning. I wrote it down, thought I'd mention it, but I don't think there's any truth to it at all. We're not getting a Star Wars movie next year, at least as far as anybody knows. I think we probably would have found out about some production if there was one. So there you go. There's a rumor that I had in my own head that I squashed on my own, and now I've shared it with you, even though I don't think it's true. How's that? All right. So one quick item, sort of aside from what's going on at San Diego Comic-Con, and I wanted to share it with you because I had an epiphany this week. So earlier this week, I'm sitting down and getting ready to play Battlefront 2, and you'll hear this in my little commentary here. And I was thinking about Star Wars, as I do a lot, and then this thought crossed my mind, and this has to do with the Force Flash fights. Okay, so this is a bit of a leak, but then again, not really. There is rumor going around, and I've mentioned this before on the show. So I suppose if you want to be completely spoiler-free, skip ahead like 2 minutes. But this is something that has not necessarily been confirmed apart from some concept art. So I was sitting down and I had this thought. I went to my phone and recorded this audio blast to share with everybody. And here is the blast that I recorded earlier in the week over this epiphany that I had over the Force Flash fights, which again, I posted on the Blaster app and shared on Twitter.
My nerd world.
Hey, it's Jon Justice, and I may have talked about this before, and I've just completely forgotten, but I'm sitting down getting ready to play Battlefront 2, and was on Reddit before I did that, and somebody had posted something in regard to the Force back scene from The Force Awakens, and it just dawned on me, and here's where the spoiler comes in. For those that don't know, Rey and Kylo are supposed to have this duel across multiple locations. And it may even take us to different time periods throughout all of the Star Wars saga films. The cover of the art book shows concept art for what these Force Flash fights might look like. And these were reported on in MakingStarWars.net. Anyway, it just dawned on me that we've kind of already seen this before. And I bet that this Force Flash fight between Kylo Ren and Rey is going to be very similar to the Force back scene that Rey experienced in The Force Awakens, especially since she was physically in those locations in that moment in the film. When she touched the lightsaber, I mean, she was in those locations, even falling to the ground and getting wet when the Knights of Ren and Kylo Ren were there. And I bet anything that the Flash fights, the Force Flash fights from The Rise of Skywalker are going to be a direct relation to what Rey experienced with that Force back scene. So I'll talk more about this and everything happening at San Diego Comic-Con coming up on this weekend's My Nerd World, the Star Wars podcast. I just wanted to take a moment, use the Blaster app, which you can find in your app store, Blaster app, or theblasterapp.com, and share that with you because it just kind of dawned on me. So hope you're having a great day, and thanks for listening. Bye. Now, I don't recall bringing that up on the show before when we talked about that particular leak from MakingStarWars.net. I remember having a discussion about it because the art book for The Rise of Skywalker shows what appears to be concept art of that particular fight. I just hadn't realized, and again, if I had, then I'd forgotten that I had, but that Force back scene was essentially the sort of, in my opinion, the inception of what we may end up seeing, of Rey being in those locations. And I actually think there's a possibility that Force back scene in The Force Awakens, like we find out why those particular locations were picked in the first place. Like that Force back scene was foreshadowing the fight that she's going to end up having with Kylo Ren, and those are some of the locations we may end up visiting in the Rise of Skywalker. By the way, I am kind of rolling with some of those individuals out there that have speculated that this may end up being the longest Star Wars movie ever, based off the amount of information that we're beginning to receive, obviously with very little footage being shown. Still haven't seen a behind-the-scenes reel yet, and we'll talk a little bit more about this when we get to the listener feedback portion of the show. But there's a lot of elements to this film, way more than I had anticipated. We know there's going to be, obviously, this major A-plot between Kylo Ren and Rey, but we also need to have this war going on in the background. And some of the material that we'll discuss in the comic books, especially this 3-part or 4-part series, Star Wars Allegiance, which is the journey to the rise of Skywalker, that's going to be providing a bit of detail and background leading into the rise of Skywalker, and the Charles Soule comic book series, The Rise of Kylo Ren, which we'll talk about in a little bit. We're getting a lot more background than I had really expected going into this film, and so I'm wondering how long this movie is going to end up being. I know that Jason Ward over at MakingStarWars.net had made a point to say that when he was told about the script, it was the longest script they'd ever done for a Star Wars film, which really gets me excited. I don't have a problem with the length of TheLast Jedi, apart from the fact that it does make it difficult in the middle of a busy day to go and sit down and watch the entire film. But when you watch it beginning to end, it is completely and utterly satisfying. Everyone knows how much I love that movie. All right, getting back to San Diego Comic-Con. Let's dive into some of the other news that came out this week and some more information about these Sith Troopers. Here's the article that was written up at StarWars.com. San Diego Comic-Con is officially here, and with it, Lucasfilm's stunning Stormtrooper exhibit featuring the debut of the menacing Sith Trooper, a new level of First Order soldier coming in Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. The crimson armor blends elements of troopers from the saga's past while incorporating aggressive new details. The materials, the color, the lines, there was something about the aesthetic of it that just felt absolutely right, said J.J. Abrams. I cannot wait, and this was in the exhibit's video that's been showing at San Diego Comic-Con. I cannot wait for people to see the work that everyone has done. Indeed, the mini-documentary offers a tantalizing glimpse behind the scenes at the making of the armor, and the results are striking. You can see the Sith Trooper along with more used armor from across the Star Wars films, and they list off the different armor that's shown at San Diego Comic-Con. The placard said this: in its ultimate push towards galactic conquest, the First Order readies an army of elite soldiers that draw inspiration and power from a dark and ancient legacy. I was trying to find, and maybe I misheard, I thought there was another quote from J.J. Abrams about the Sith Trooper where he talked about how different it looked, because I remember people complaining about that, and I'll get to what I mean here in just a moment. However, I love this Sith Trooper, and I mentioned this at length last week, and I've heard many people making the complaint that it looks just like a recycled Stormtrooper, and it's not all that different. I disagree. I think it looks drastically different when you get up close and you look at the lines, you look at the styling of the armor. Obviously, it's going to be reminiscent of a First Order trooper, just like other troopers throughout the saga films are somewhat reminiscent of other ones in one way, shape, or form. I know people have also speculated this would just be one character, and one of the displays at San Diego Comic-Con shows a whole garrison, if you will, of these Sith Troopers, not to mention that promo poster that's now been validated a couple times over, obviously also showed many Sith Troopers on it as well. I'm going to talk more about these Sith Troopers when we get to listener feedback, because several emails rolled in based off of last week's show. And when I mentioned it's going to get exciting and spicy, because some people were surprised by my take, and I think there may have been some misunderstanding of what I was talking about and the information that I was sharing versus my opinion of what's going to happen in the film. But again, we'll save some of that, most of that commentary, for when we get to listener feedback later on in the show. Okay, this was not a San Diego Comic-Con reveal. However, this did come out this week, and I wanted to share it with you because of my love of the vehicles in Star Wars. But Bespin Bulletin released a report this week on Thursday. The mysterious orange X-Wing belongs to Poe Dameron. So you may recall in October of last year, Making Star Wars shared an image of an orange X-Wing in Black Park, England, where The Rise of Skywalker was shooting at the time. At the time, many questioned if the X-Wing was even orange, and speculation ran as to who its owner was, from Poe Dameron to Wedge Antilles. In March, a retail poster leaked, which showed the orange X-Wing, proving that Making Star Wars was right once again, but gave no hint as to who its owner was. Today, Bespin Bulletin found out. I have seen definitive proof that the orange X-Wing belongs to none other than Resistance hotshot flyboy Poe Dameron. The X-Wing is referred to as Poe's X-Wing fighter. I will not reveal my sources, but they are very trusted, and I will say this: expect to see products on this in the coming months. So my speculation on this is the person that ended up seeing the packaging for the toy for the orange X-Wing fighter. Now, Spartacus Not Spartacus is, I believe, that is the moderator for the Star Wars Reddit leaks page, made an interesting point that at Galaxy's Edge, which takes place between 8 and 9 in canon, there is a black X-Wing fighter that is there at Galaxy's Edge, so that would seem to sort of take that out of canon at Galaxy's Edge, considering the fact that if it takes place between, and there is only one black X-Wing, and Poe Dameron's got blown up in The Last Jedi, then that one should technically be orange, unless we're to assume there are other black X-Wing fighters. Neither here nor there. I don't care. I just thought it was an interesting observation. And hey, that rhymed. I didn't plan on having it do so. But my assumption is Bespin Bulletin must have seen some of the packaging for the toy, and that is how they were able to confirm that this orange X-Wing fighter, and it is on that promo poster. If you go back several podcasts a couple months ago when we talked at length about that promo poster, there's a photo of it on that particular podcast feed, so you can go there and check it out. You can also just go onto your Googles, go Google that, and you'll end up finding a picture of that orange X-Wing fighter. It's kind of a reverse paint scheme of what Poe Dameron already have. It looks rad. I love the look of it, and I personally can't wait to get my hands on the toy whenever it is released.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
All right, before we get to our next reveal from San Diego Comic-Con, I want to take a quick moment and let you know about a podcast I listened to this week that is really worth the listen. My friend Zach, who runs Cinemodities, and more specifically and irrelevant to this podcast, the Knights of Vader podcast. I've been honored to be a guest on their show a few times, and hopefully we'll get Zach on this show sometime soon. I've been wanting to have him on, but because of my weekend schedule and my inability to really lock down a time when I go and record the podcast, it's been near impossible for me to fairly go and line up Zach as a guest, but I am planning on doing that soon. Zach's episode this week is a prediction episode with just him hosting, talking about his box office prediction for The Rise of Skywalker. I will say, and this is why I wanted to tell you about it, I am personally tired of talking about box office returns. I'm kind of over it. I want to just be able to go watch the movie and not care how much the movies make and not make a big deal about it. I just think it's a part of the fandom that we pick apart all too often. That being said, I loved Zach's podcast talking about the box office numbers, because what he does is, one, he's a bit of an expert on it. He's got some background in this, which is really interesting in and of itself. But two, he also goes and looks at the history of all the saga films in order to craft his opinion on how he thinks The Rise of Skywalker is going to do in December. It is really, it's a really, really interesting listen. And it's been one of the best Star Wars podcasts, apart from my own, of course, that I've listened to in a long, long time. So Knights of Vader, go and check it out. The show's good in and of itself, but this episode this week, talking about what The Rise of Skywalker might do at the box office, was really, really insightful, and I encourage everybody to go and give it a listen.
When I found you, I saw raw, untamed power. And beyond that, something special.
All right, we were talking about vehicles a moment ago and Poe's new X-Wing fighter. There was a, dubbed by the fans, which I thought was funny, the Dorito TIE Fighter. On the promo poster that I was talking about, on the bottom right-hand side, there was this triangle-winged TIE Fighter, which a lot of people pointed to and tried to use as a means to say the poster wasn't real. It was real. That TIE Fighter had some concept art in the Force Awakens art book. The cover for the visual dictionary, and also the cross-sections, which I guess they're combining into the visual dictionary this year, for The Rise of Skywalker, a high-resolution image of the cover for the visual dictionary for The Rise of Skywalker was released. On the cover, front and center, is a Knight of Ren that looks amazing. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about the Knights of Ren coming up in a bit, because there is going to be a comic series based off of Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren, and we'll give you some details on that. But the Knight of Ren on the cover looks fantastic. The thing that really drew my eye, and the other interesting item of note, along with the Sith Trooper, which we've seen, was this new TIE Fighter. It's called a TIE Dagger. And again, this was one of the items when it popped up on Friday that I took to my phone to record an audio blast and talk about. So this was my commentary that I posted on my Blaster app and shared on Twitter, talking about this brand new TIE First Order TIE Dagger. Here, give this a listen. Hey, it's Jon Justice, and first off, if you listen to my podcast, My Nerd World, a Star Wars podcast, it will be out sometime this weekend. I'm fighting a really bad cold, and I felt well enough at the moment to put up a blast talking about this new TIE Fighter. But if you listen to the show and you're wondering, where is it? Because it normally comes out on Saturdays. It'll be here either later today or most likely tomorrow. So, San Diego Comic-Con continues, and there was a big book panel for Lucasfilm, and the visual dictionary was the cover for the Rise of Skywalker visual dictionary was revealed, and with it we got a high-res version of it too. A lot of stuff coming out of San Diego Comic-Con for the Rise of Skywalker, more than I had anticipated. So there's some interesting things on the cover, including a Knight of Ren, and we'll get into that on the podcast. But I wanted to take a moment, because I'm such a huge fan of the vehicles in Star Wars, and talk about this new TIE Dagger variant. It's been dubbed the TIE Dorito, or Dorito Fighter, because it has diamond-shaped wings. Now, we saw a small version of this ship on the leaked promotional poster that came out several months ago, and it was hard to kind of get a look at it. On the cover, you can really zoom in, and it's got a nice high-quality version of it. At first, I was a little torn over the look. There is a concept art version in the Force Awakens book. Seeing it up close in the detail, though, I really, really like it. I'm curious how it lands, since most TIE fighters sit on the bottom of the panels on the side, and since these are triangle-shaped, that would be difficult. Although, looking at the detail, there's actually 4 sets of wings, it looks like. There's the 2 main triangle wings, and on the outside of them, raised off a bit, is another set of smaller triangles, and I'm wondering if those pivot maybe down to a point to allow the TIE Fighter to land sitting, horizontal. If not, then it would land sort of pointed down, and that would be kind of cool, too. Also, looking at the detail of it, take a look at the photo if you're looking at this either on the Blaster app or on Twitter. And the cockpit canopy has been changed. It doesn't have the same geometric pattern as we're used to seeing on TIE Fighter cockpits, and then also the extensions that attach to the wings themselves are a bit wedge shaped. So again, looking at the TIE Dagger up close really provides some interesting detail and more I guess a different overall look than your standard TIE fighter, and I like that. I like the fact that they really kind of kept with the same aesthetic but really switched it up. It also has red accents, much like the new version of Kylo Ren's TIE silencer that was in the Rise of Skywalker trailer. So take a look at the picture. Again, it's on my Twitter if you're looking at this on Twitter, or it's on the on my feed on Blaster as well. Leave a comment here on Twitter, or if you download the Blaster app, you can leave a comment under my post if you go to the App Store and search for Blaster app and do it there. So, again, I'll talk more about this on the show once I decide to go and do it. This is about all that I can handle with a stuffy nose at the moment. And keep an eye on My Nerd World, at My Nerd World on Twitter throughout the weekend. And follow me. I'll continue to post comments about the latest reveals coming out of San Diego Comic-Con. And again, I've been surprised. I wasn't expecting this much. So thanks for listening, and talk to you soon. In the middle of listening back to my commentary, I was taking a look at the photo itself, and I can't wait to see some other angles on this thing, just because there's some detail going on in the wing section that I think perspective-wise you can't see. There looks to be some ducks, and as a matter of fact, I'm seeing some guns now in between, and I said diamond shape, I meant triangle shape at the beginning of my commentary from that blast. But it looks like there's a set of guns that actually rest between the two wing areas at the front of the, on the sides of the panels, the triangle panels. I'm really digging the look of the cockpit and the way that it connects the wedge shape. I really like this. From a distance, it just didn't really do anything for me. But again, looking at this up close, I'm really, really digging the look of it. And this is one of those things, too. Curious to get your thoughts. You know, if you're into the vehicles like I am, really curious to get your thoughts on what you think of this new TIE Dagger. All right. So, other information that came out of San Diego Comic-Con this week. There was this, and I got super excited about this, and then I kind of pulled back my excitement a bit. But there is a new 4-issue Marvel series called Star Wars Allegiance. And it's the Journey to the Rise of Skywalker that's coming out in October. When they announced this, they released on Friday this huge banner. Almost would be perfect for a Twitter banner or a Facebook banner that depicted artwork from this 4-issue Marvel comic book series, right, called Allegiance. And my instinctive reaction was that we were seeing images that would be from The Rise of Skywalker, and that's not the case. These are images that represent the stories that are taking place in this 4-issue series. Still cool nonetheless. The artwork is really, really interesting. And a hodgepodge of some artwork that we've seen, and actually some photos that they've shown from The Rise of Skywalker. So this is the last audio blast that I recorded this week that I'll share with you on the show. And like I said earlier, this will be one of the only times that I go and do this. I'll be giving out additional commentary apart from the podcast, but I hope that you'll go and download the app and listen to it or follow me on Twitter. That way you can catch up. But obviously, since I'm fighting a cold, this makes it a lot easier to play audio that I've already recorded. So this was recorded on Friday. Put on Blaster and Twitter, and was my instinctive reaction over this banner that got released. And here you go. Hey, it's Jon Justice from My Nerd World, a Star Wars podcast, and I have a breaking news blast to share with you from the Blaster app. San Diego Comic-Con is going on right now, and just released was Star Wars Allegiance. Apparently, there's going to be a miniseries leading up to the Rise of Skywalker. And I love these little moments in time. I get so excited when we get stuff like this. This is a massive banner from Marvel for this comic series. I mean, it's huge, perfect for wallpaper or background on Twitter or Facebook. If you are listening to this via Twitter, if you do the hashtag The Rise of Skywalker or attached to this blast from the Blaster app, you can see the image attached to this post. I'll move from right to left in the image, and we'll certainly be talking about this even more on the Star Wars podcast show, which I'm going to be recording tomorrow. There's some familiar aliens from the prequel trilogy, along with Chewbacca on the far right. We have some X-Wing fighters. The images of Rey are really striking. The artwork's fantastic, but in both images here, the first one's on the far right, you got BB-8, and then you have Rey in the outfit that we've seen her in from the trailer, but then you've got her holding the staff in both shots, not the lightsaber. Also, need to note in the upper part of the frame, several Star Destroyers. One of them, I want to say it looks a little different, but I think it's just the angle. You get two planets on here, both of which I don't recognize. The one on the far left side of the banner looks like it could be Endor. The one on the far right has got like a purple hue to it, and I'm not familiar with it. Also, we see Finn and Poe. The center of the banner has several of the white First Order troopers, none of the Sith troopers in the photo. Several of the First Order TIE fighters coming at you in the banner. And then you got Hux. Kylo Ren with his tri-saber, not wearing the helmet again. Hux, C-3PO, and R2-D2, which I think is interesting because we haven't seen much of him. There's also this corner left side of the frame. Well, let me talk about, because the most intriguing part is some new stuff here, but let me talk about what else is on the left-hand side. We have Leia. We have what looks to be Amon Calamari. Obviously not Admiral Akbar, because he's gone after The Last Jedi, but we do have Amon Cal. And then Rose. The drawing of Rose looks to be an image taken from, or artwork that's from an image from The Last Jedi. But this is a banner for this miniseries leading up to the rise of Skywalker. Also, what's very interesting is in the far left-hand side of the frame, there's this monster, which looks like, I don't even know how to describe it. The horns coming out the side of the head looks really evil, very animalistic. And the drawing next to it, the art next to it shows Rey with her staff, same outfit, but she's got a breathing apparatus on. So this is really interesting. Now, I don't know if this directly relates to the Rise of Skywalker, meaning this is from the Rise of Skywalker, or these are stories that are going to be told leading up to the Rise of Skywalker. I will say the image on the far left of Rey with the breathing apparatus on does look very much like the shot that we saw of her walking through a forest area from the panel at Star Wars Celebration. It looks like they simply added the breathing apparatus. Now, that's also interesting because we saw her with some kind of pack in the trailer at the end, looking at the destroyed Death Star out in the water. Many of us have assumed, based off of the artwork, and more specifically the concept art for The Force Awakens, that she probably is going to go diving at some point. So perhaps they added that breathing apparatus to the drawing that we've already seen. The banner is gorgeous, though. And again, there'll be more information about this, I'm sure, available leading up to tomorrow's show, but I wanted to take this opportunity and record a blast via the Blaster app, which is available at theblasterapp.com or just Blaster app in the App Store, and share this because I was just so excited to see this piece of art. So be sure to check out My Nerd World, a Star Wars podcast. Comes out every single weekend on all your favorite podcasting platforms. You can find it. I hope you'll give it a chance and listen to it if you've never heard it before. We do have a lot of fun on the show, and love to get your thoughts on this banner too. You can drop me an email, talkshownerd at gmail.com, or leave a comment on this if you're reading this on Twitter, or if you download the Blaster app. You can leave it on Blaster. You can find me, My Nerd World, on Blaster, and Jon Justice. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Well, I think I've talked about the Blaster app enough on the show this week. Since that recording on Friday, they have now shown during the publishing panel that the banner was actually split up into 4 different pieces. So if you look at the banner as a whole, they divided it up into 4 sections, and each section of the banner represents another issue in this comic book series. I'm really, really excited. All of this journey to the Rise of Skywalker stuff is super exciting because of what happened in The Last Jedi. Not what happened in the story, but because of the fact that there was no time jump between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. And so it's almost like we're going to be getting a whole series of stories that are almost like their own little film leading into The Rise of Skywalker. And I'm very curious to see how J.J. Abrams handles the transition of not having these stories filling in the background. And I'm saying this really wonky. I'm going to give myself a pass because I'm not feeling well. But with the other films and the other saga films, not all of them, but with most of the other saga films, there's such a big gap between the movies that you can easily go and sort of cover it in the crawl. And you can do this with The Rise of Skywalker too. But with the other films, that was kind of consistent between all of the films. And so we didn't really have anything to fill in between The Force Awakens and the Last Jedi, because they happened right again, right? They happened one right after the other. So I'm excited about all the stuff we're getting now leading into The Rise of Skywalker, because we didn't get all that filler before The Last Jedi because there was no time jump. All right, speaking of which, this was super exciting, and I'm really, really interested to see what this ends up being. But The Rise of Kylo Ren. The Rise of Kylo Ren by Charles Soule blew the roof off the panel. This is the story from StarWarsNewsNet.com. Charles Soule has set the bar very high with his Star Wars comic titles. His exploration of Vader's early days post-Revenge of the Sith in his Marvel title Darth Vader is an example of the gold standard for Star Wars storytelling. This is excellent news for Kylo Ren fans. As Soule joked, it's Ben to Ren. It will be a 4-issue limited series released in December to lead right up to the Rise of Skywalker. Soule's Darth Vader stories featured the Dark Lord doing lots of soul searching and reaching deep into the dark side to try and contact Padme, so I can't imagine what he's cooking up as far as Vader's tortured grandson is concerned. I'm still holding out hope for the Ben Solo novel by Claudia Gray, but this is a damn fine start. So there was some, it's not in this particular version of covering the story, but there was a comment made that this would also talk about Luke Skywalker. The image they released, which I used for the podcast this week, for The Rise of Kylo Ren, shows Kylo Ren standing in front in almost like a triangle formation. He's standing in front with his lightsaber pointed down, wearing the helmet, with the Knights of Ren behind him, kind of flanking him. He's wearing the reforged helmet in the photo. They said that Luke Skywalker would be a part of this, and this story, as Charles Soule said, was Ben to Ren. So I assume there's going to be quite a bit of time jumping in this. That photo is obviously after The Last Jedi and the reforged helmet, and potentially right into The Rise of Skywalker, because we see the helmet being reforged in the trailer. Okay, so we'll have to wait and see how this plays out in the timeline. But my assumption here is that we are going to be going pre-The Force Awakens. We're going to find out about Luke, what happened at the Jedi Temple, and with Kylo Ren and the formation of the Knights of Ren. So I'm really, really excited for this. I was reading the thread on Reddit, and the Fourth Sniper posted this comment, and it was interesting enough I wanted to share it with you. If we'd been shown this image even 4 months ago, we'd all be calling it fake on the basis of it being too good to be true. 4-issue run suggests it'll be a pretty compact story, but the late December release date, and not October-September with the other The Rise of Skywalker tie-in stuff, says to me that it'll have some pretty big secrets. But if there's anyone I'd want to write a story about Kylo and the Knights of Ren, it's Charles Soule. Hopefully, once the pseudo-embargo on the character is lifted after The Rise of Skywalker, we'll get a full novel too, preferably James Luceno or Claudia Gray. So we're getting a lot of exciting stuff, and this is why I really felt that people's complaining that I'd heard, and I talked a bit about the skepticism last week, people's complaining that I'd heard as of late really wasn't worthwhile or relevant. I wasn't expecting anything going into San Diego Comic-Con, and we've gotten a slew of new information just based off of the publication announcements and cover art I mean, there was a sticker book that was released and a whole bunch of other, publications and comic books and books that I'm not even talking about on the show this week. We got way more details than I ever could have imagined. And I imagine that in a couple weeks when we go to D23, which is what we're being told Disney and Lucasfilm was really holding out to share with us, we'll probably get that behind the scenes reel. We'll most likely get a lot more information. And I'm also of the opinion, too, that one of the reasons why Benioff and Weiss didn't show up for San Diego Comic-Con is because they are going to show up for D23, and we're going to get a little bit of information as to what those films that they're working on are actually going to be about. Pure speculation on my part. I have no, I know nothing. I'm just purely speculating.
I've seen this raw strength only once before. It didn't scare me enough then. Does now.
All right, I want to talk about just a few more items before we get to listener feedback this week. The first item is, let me go back for just a moment and address a little bit of this common fan complaining that I've heard. If you've been listening to the show long enough, you know that I really try to keep it positive. I love everything about Star Wars. I love some stuff more than other stuff, but for the most part, I love everything about Star Wars, and I always will. And it's a huge part of my life, and my life is too darn short to spend time complaining about things you don't have any control over. I'll say. So that being said, I wanted to just get this off my chest. I've heard a lot of common fan complaining about certain things, and I've mentioned often, and I believe this, that this is mostly due to the fact that we hear it because of social networking now. People have the ability to share their thoughts on a whim. For crying out loud, I've been promoting this Blaster app like crazy, which is along the same lines. I like the Blaster app. Remember I said I wasn't going to talk about it anymore, but I'm talking about it. I like the Blaster app because you can hear context. I prefer to listen rather than read. And sometimes if you hear somebody making a comment and hear the tone, it has a more authentic feel than just reading somebody's comment. But some of the common fan complaints, especially around some of the stuff that's come out of San Diego Comic-Con, I just don't understand, especially when it comes to like the Sith Trooper. And a lot of people making a comment like, well, it's probably not going to be in the movie very much, just like Captain Phasma wasn't in the movie very much, and they promote these individuals and then we don't get to see them a lot and they look so cool but they don't do anything. And I can't help but sit back and go, that's been Star Wars all along. Disney and Lucasfilm, they give us these little tidbits because we love to dissect it. And you only have so much time in a movie. Like, I don't understand the Captain Phasma complaints. I know how rad she looked. And I know that people were disappointed she wasn't used more in The Force Awakens. But we had a story to tell. Well, we didn't have a story to tell. J.J. Abrams had a story to tell. And that story centered more around the other characters. And there just wasn't enough time for exposition on Captain Phasma. Or for Snoke, for that matter. I thought that the way Captain Phasma was handled in The Last Jedi was amazing. I love that fight between her and Finn. I thought they utilized her really well. That's what I wanted to see. There's some really unique moments in that fight. I've mentioned before that shot when she takes out her little hand blaster and starts just pew, 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 starts firing away at Rose while she hides behind that container. I love that shot. So sci-fi. I dig it. So it makes me a little sad when I hear that fan complaining. Like when it comes to I've heard so many people talk about the Sith Trooper and say, oh, it's probably not going to be used in the movie hardly at all, or it'll be like the Praetorian Guards where they show up, they look cool, and then they just get defeated by a Mary Sue. I just do not understand that at all. And you know what I don't want? I don't want Disney and Lucasfilm to stop releasing these types of teases. They're so secretive with the movies themselves for good reason. They want us to have the best experience possible when we go to see these movies in the theaters. So they feed us little tiny nuggets here and there that we can go and comb over, even though they may not be huge things within the movie. But so what? This is fun. And what I don't want is the fans to complain to the point where Disney says, well, we're going to stop showing them Stormtrooper variants or TIE Fighter variants of every single time the fandom's going to come out and, start complaining all the time. All right, so I just wanted to address that really quick because I hear it and it drives me completely batty and I don't understand it. So I just, again, life's too short. The Sith Troopers look rad. And they do look way different in my opinion. I'm still convinced they're clones. I'm sorry, that helmet looks too much like that Revenge of the Sith clone trooper helmet for them not to be clones. I just don't know who they're clones of. Maybe they're clones of Captain Phasma. They're a bunch of Phasmas. Now, in light of my just conversation that I said, how funny would that be, right? All right, one more quick point about Star Wars movies, and then we'll move over to listener feedback, because there's a lot to cover this week. But as I mentioned, I sat down and I was watching Solo and Rogue One back-to-back, and I hadn't done that yet. That's a really fun watch, by the way. Watching Solo, just in the timeline, because I actually watched, and I mentioned this last week, Revenge of the Sith, and I was listening back to my shows. Sometimes I do that just to see if I've got any. I like to listen back on occasion to the shows to see if I've developed any crutches or things like this, to make sure it sounds good. Just something you do. Yeah, I have a habit of doing just because I work in radio as it is. And I noticed that I had a couple of flubs last week where I meant to say The Rise of Skywalker and I said Revenge of the Sith. So don't think those things don't go unnoticed when you go in and notice them. Oh, and apparently it's also Praetorian Guard, not Praetorian Guard. I had a rather lengthy email that came over of somebody correcting me that it's not Praetorian Guard, John. It's Praetorian Guard. Okay, tomato, tomato. Thank you for the email and letting me know. I appreciate it, and sorry if that drove you nuts. Okay, watching Solo and Rogue One back-to-back. That's a really fun watch if you haven't done it yet. Those movies flow very, very well into one another. Mostly, I think, because of the timeline, because they're taking place like in sequential order. And we're in the same timeline, so aesthetically things are matching. But the way the movies are shot and tonally going from Solo into Rogue One, it's a really nice flow. So if you're ever looking for like a double feature and something a little bit different, that's a fun one. And I love Solo. The love story in Solo is so good. I know I've talked about it before, and I'm such a sucker for the romance as much as I am for the vehicles, but I love every single one of those moments between Kira and Han Solo. And I saw somebody make a comment, and I never thought about it this way, and now this is my headcanon. But Kira at the end, spoiler alert, decides to stay with Crimson Dawn and reaches out to Darth Maul, not because she was betraying Han, but because she knew it was the only way that Han could be safe. That if she had left with Han, Crimson Dawn would have been tracking all of them down. And by turning her back on Han and succumbing to a life of criminal, behavior, giving into a criminal life, she is actually protecting Han. Like her love of Han was that much. And that really fits with the character, in my opinion, because I love those moments. And I know I'm repeating myself from previous podcasts, but the moment in the beginning when they're first split up and Kira's like, run, get away, Han. And then when they meet up again on Dryden Voss's barge, and she's like, if you would have stayed, they would have killed you. Like, you can tell there's just real, genuine emotion there in the writing between those two characters, and I just absolutely love it. One more other quick observation, and that is the scene when Tobias Beckett, Han Solo, and Chewbacca show up for the first time at that party on the top level of Dryden Voss's ship. It really does a lot for tying in the aesthetics between the older films and The Last Jedi. Because that party scene and the design work in that party scene is very much reminiscent of the Canto Bight casino scene. And I didn't really pick up on it until this last viewing. Now, I'll be honest, I don't particularly care as much for some of the flashier side of Star Wars stuff. I like the Canto Bight scene in The Last Jedi. I've really grown to love it, to be honest with you. I enjoy that portion of the film. Some of the costumes for it, I think, it's tough. And I think even Kaplan, who did the costume, mentioned it in the documentary that he was surprised they were going to be doing a casino because they hadn't done that before in Star Wars, and that was going to be difficult. And I think he did a good job, but sort of dressed up fancy people in Star Wars is not something that we've seen all that often. However, that scene in Solo in Dryden Voss's ship when Han first sees Kira again, and then also the Canto Bight sequence really complement each other really, really well. That aesthetic is really appealing, and I like the connection. And it makes me appreciate the costumes more, seeing similar design work
in another film in arguably a much, a different era. It really connects the two together, and I really, really, really dig that and wanted to share it.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
And with that being said, it's time to get into listener feedback this week. You can always email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com, or leave me a comment on YouTube. So we'll start off here, and I mentioned this email last week from Laura, and my intention originally was to read the whole thing because it just makes a lot of great points in here. However, because of the amount of email and listener feedback that I have this week, I'm going to just share with you some of the highlights. Laura, just so you know, I have read through all of this, and I love a lot of these thoughts. But again, for the sake of time, I'm going to kind of zero in and make a bit of a donut out of your email. So, hi, John. First of all, let me know I love your show. I didn't think I could be more excited for 9, but then I started listening to your show, and now I'm even more giddy with anticipation. Let me preface this by saying that some of my thoughts in this email are based on past episodes of yours, but I just discovered your show a couple of weeks ago, and I've been catching up. I am of the mindset that Disney may choose to go with an ambiguous ending when it comes to romantic Reylo, which I'm okay with. My only real non-negotiable when it comes to 9 is Ben being redeemed to give meaning to Han's death and provide hope for the Skywalker lineage. And my last thought is that I don't believe Kylo Ren is striking down a Knight of Ren in the Red Forest scene in the trailer, not only because the costume, especially the helmet, don't match any of the costumes for the Knights of Ren, but also because of that weird upside-down large salad bowl-shaped helmet seems to match exactly with the one in the Force-back Vision in TFA, where Rey looks like she is about to be struck down in the rain by someone with a lightsaber, and Kylo in the Knights of Ren runs the man from behind, which got me thinking if that was exactly a moment where he was protecting her, who knows. I was sitting here during a break listening to your podcast and thought it'd be nice to share my theories with someone. Thanks and have a fantastic weekend. Thank you very much for the email, Laura. I really do appreciate it, and everything else you said in the email, even though I didn't share it on the show this week. All right, Across the Stars writes this. Yeah, those are probably Palp's troops, and we see Kylo/Ben fighting alongside the white troops in the trailer. So maybe Kylo and his troops are going to fight Palp's troops along with the Resistance together for the first time. I could be totally off this, but that would be epic. And someone asked Matt Martin from Lucasfilm a question regarding this. They asked, didn't Kylo/Ben say he was done with the Jedi/Sith? This trilogy is a mess. He responded with, or maybe, just maybe, the film gives some context. Okay, now I have further thoughts about that because there's several emails that have referenced this. So I'm going to save my further thoughts on that in a moment because this is where some of the question marks about last week's show come into play. All right, Princess Cupcakes writes, I do agree, John, that most likely Snoke is being controlled by Sheev the whole time. And I remember the original working title was Black Diamond. That probably has something to do with Snoke's ring. He got that stone from Mustafar under Vader's castle, so maybe Sheev's spirit or whatever was occupying that ring the whole time. It's all just so exciting. I can't wait to know everything. Great show, John. Yeah, it's a possibility. I don't know. I've kind of looked past the working titles for these movies and trying to read anything into them. There was this Project Luminous that was announced, and nobody knew what it was, and everybody was assuming that Project Luminous had to do something with The Empire Strikes Back, because Yoda says, luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. Project Luminous turned out to be the Charles Soule writing the Rise of Kylo Ren comics, so one may not have anything to do with the other. But I do like the theory. I know a lot of people have pointed to that Black Diamond ring as potentially being something. It also could have just been something that was there for a design aesthetic, and that Pablo Hidalgo from the story group who writes those descriptions ended up making something up. I suppose we'll all find out very, very soon. But thank you as always, Princess Cupcakes. Nicole writes this. I thought you would be saying that the Sith Troopers belong to Palpatine, obviously because he is a Sith. I was shocked to hear you say that they follow Kylo, which just contradicted what he said in the throne room. Kylo has never lied to Rey in her face. That he was being truthful in everything he was saying to her, including ending the Sith. In my opinion, he meant every word. He was trying to appeal to her,
but was also not lying. At that point, he wasn't mad or angry. He was telling her a proposal of what they could let go. MakingStarWars.net is not reliable when it comes to plot details. They leaked out the Sith Troopers before we and they found out that Palpatine is involved. They assumed and speculated that they obviously belong to Kylo because they didn't know that Palpatine was coming back somehow. Also, Kylo isn't a Sith. Lucasfilm has repeatedly said that. I'm a bit disappointed with this podcast. Okay, let me address a couple things. First off, MakingStarWars.net is more reliable when it comes to leaks than anybody else out there. Their sources repeatedly said that the Sith Troopers answer to Kylo and the Knights of Ren. They also had an extensive report talking about how the Knights of Ren may have returned from the Beyond, and perhaps they brought something with them. It could have been these troopers, and because Kylo Ren is running the show right now for the First Order, he immediately takes control of them. That doesn't mean they also cannot be tied to Palpatine, but based off the reporting, which Jason Ward at MakingStarWars.net is very careful to make sure that he has a couple of different sources before he writes an article and runs with something in particular, so I tend to trust it. Most of what, Nicole, you're saying here is actually depends on a point of view. They can be Palpatine, and they can be Palpatine's troops, potentially, and still answer to Kylo Ren for a time being until Palpatine returns. They don't have to be there doesn't have to be, in my opinion, mutually exclusive to one another. When it comes to Kylo Ren and what he said to Rey in the throne room, I think it's open to debate whether or not he was lying or not, okay? But let's say, for the sake of argument, that he wasn't lying in that moment after they defeated the Praetorian Guards. And he's telling Rey, legitimately, let the past die. The Sith, the Jedi, all of it, let it die. She rejects him. And I'll say it again. The moment he wakes up, he lies to Hux. The girl killed Snoke. So, he could have been telling the truth in that moment. But even if he was telling the truth in that moment, it doesn't mean that the rejection of Rey, or it could mean the rejection of Rey, of his advances, he changes his mind and decides, well, the heck with that. I had my chance. I blew it with the girl. I'm going dark side and embracing all this stuff. None of us know the context of where the Sith is coming from, apart from the obvious connection to Palpatine, but we don't know what his return is. And we also don't know how Kylo Ren is considering himself and how much time has gone by the time the Rise of Skywalker shows up. So, again, we know Kylo isn't a Sith. I've never said he is a Sith. That being said, we know he's a Vader fanboy. We know the Sith are making a return in name form, in some way, shape, or form. There has been some publications that have been put out, and looking back at some recent editions, where Kylo Ren is still considered to be just a dark side user. And there was a Japanese flyer that came out talking about the conquest of the First Order in the galaxy. That's a promotion for the Rise of Skywalker, and it mentions Kylo Ren's oppressive rule. So clearly he is supreme leader now. We'll all have to wait and see how this plays out in the movie. I'm sorry that you were disappointed by the podcast, but let me also say that I do try to, in my defense, I do try to take a lot of this stuff with speculation. None of this is gospel truth. Any of it can change. I just report what I hear, and I don't get married to any of these ideas. As I've always said, I look at these as historical documents when the movies are released. They very well may be different. You may be 100% right. I'll wait to see how it plays out, and I'll accept whatever the content creators decided to do. So I'm sorry if you were disappointed with that. But again, I think a lot of this is really open to interpretation because none of us have seen the movie yet. And I do trust the way that MakingStarWars.net puts out their information and what they determine is credible and not credible. And 9 times out of 10, their stuff has been pretty spot on when Jason Ward has gone so far as to say, I've got multiple sources saying A, B, C, and D. And he has multiple sources saying that the troops answer to Kylo Ren and to the Knights of Ren. And also I want to add something too. When it comes to Palpatine, we don't know how big his role is going to be or if we'll even see him in the flesh. Ian McDiarmid said himself that people should sort of check themselves and set their expectations low
when it comes to his presence in the film, which could mean that he's there, but we never see him physically. We see him possessing somebody, okay? It's still open. So, Nicole, I hope you'll continue to listen to the show. A lot of this is open to interpretation, and I'm sorry if you were disappointed. Certainly not my intention. I like to make everybody happy. All right, Sophia writes this. I think the name Snoke is supposed to make us think of a snake. A devil disguised himself as a snake in the Garden of Eden. Yes, he did. Just like Star Wars version of the devil, Palpatine disguised himself as Snoke. Good point, Sophia. Thank you. Princess Cupcakes is back. Normally, we would have a teaser poster by now. They usually release it with the teaser trailer, but I have a feeling it's going to be really spoilery and Reylo-centric, and I can't wait. Yeah, the teaser poster is interesting because I know we got that rad, one of my favorite Star Wars posters ever. I've got a like on everything. But that rad teaser poster we got for The Last Jedi, where it's got Kylo Ren and Luke's face living large in red with Rey underneath holding the saber up, splitting up the two. It's one of my favorite Star Wars posters ever. When The Force Awakens came out, we had the Drew Struzan poster that was just for the individuals at the event. And I think that was Celebration. I'm pretty sure that was Celebration. It might have been San Diego Comic-Con. Normally, we do have the behind-the-scenes reel by now, but they're saving that, obviously, at least unless it drops this weekend, which I doubt. They're saving that for D23. I'm trying to think of what the Force Awakens teaser poster, I thought, apart from that Drew Struzan one, was just the logo poster. I think that The Last Jedi was the anomaly, giving us something more of a teaser poster. So, but Princess Cupcakes, to your point, and again, this was written prior to San Diego Comic-Con. We've gotten so much information this weekend and artwork from San Diego Comic-Con that I think that's kind of replacing the teaser poster at this point in time. All right, let's see. Amanda B. Talking about Daisy's grumpy Dark Lord in the video she shot that's available on YouTube. I take Daisy's grumpy Dark Lord thing as a funny thing between friends, like her calling John Peanut before seeing Adam's picture. I thought it was cute. Okay, cool. Shock Fitness says this. Galaxy's Edge isn't quite the draw that Disney thought it would be. Personally, I would have built a planet that fans already had an emotional connection to instead of a random planet not depicted in the movies. I am not a complainer. It's merely what I would have done. Okay, let me add some clarity to this real quick. A lot of the reporting over Galaxy's Edge has been wrong. Yes, I think that the majority of us thought that it was going to be packed at its opening. But you look at some of and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I've watched several YouTube videos of people that have gone to the park, and a lot of these videos are showing at-capacity crowds at Galaxy's Edge that isn't getting reported on, especially in the early evening because it's been warm. Also, Disneyland has become a very regional park where the majority of those that flock to Disneyland are people that live in Southern California and they buy those annual passes. Disney blocked off and blacked out. They blacked out the dates at the launch of Galaxy's Edge to those season pass holders. So that may have certainly cut back on the attendance at the park at Galaxy's Edge, because people who get there and go there all the time and pay thousands of dollars to go whenever they want have not been able to go as often as they'd like to go to Galaxy's Edge because they were trying to go and make sure that they had a lot of crowd control. Also, the Rise of the Resistance ride isn't open yet, so you've got one ride and then you have all the shops. And I think a lot of people are waiting to schedule their vacations too, and most people like myself said, I'm not going when it's opening because it's going to be packed. I don't think Disney's going to have any problem with it in the future. To your point of an emotional connection than a random planet not depicted in the movie. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that, but I also know that Disney's looking long term, and they want to make this a really unique and different experience and something that lasts a long time. So making it its own thing and having its own storyline attached to it is very much along the same lines as the other Disney rides in the park. And I think that's an element to this that people don't think about very often. Pirates of the Caribbean, the Haunted Mansion, Big Thunder Mountain, Space Mountain, all of these movies, all of these rides have themes behind them.
stories behind them. Some of them even been made into movies, right? I think that's what Disney was going for. They were going for something unique to the park and special to the park that had its own story. Obviously, there's a lot of ancillary material written about it, and I firmly believe that at some point in time, we will be traveling to Batuu in a either TV show, live-action TV show, or in a film. I think that that's just a matter of time. I wouldn't buy into the hype as much of Galaxy's Edge not being a draw. I think it really is just because a lot of people assumed that and stayed away, and they blacked out all those season pass holders. And again, I've watched a lot of videos talking about the park being at capacity. All right. EcoKill11 writes this. If I may throw a theory out there. Of course you may. Kylo goes full dark side, paralleling Jason Solo from the old EU. Rey is the last Jedi, and Kylo is bent on destroying the Jedi once and for all, as was Vader's legacy, finishing what Vader started. In the time that has passed, Kylo Ren has embraced the Plagueis Sidious view and was aiming for rule and immortality, so he searched and studied the Sith, created the Sith army, and called in the Knights of Ren to hunt the Jedi and the First Order to take control of systems across the galaxy. I like it. Rey follows the Force and helps the Resistance, while at the same time searches for a way to balance the Force and find her calling through the Force. Not sure I'm entirely sold on Reylo in any fashion, least of all a love connection. Okay. In a way, I hope it ends with Rey destroying Kylo, Sidious, and the First Order. Then the new Jedi can rise. Remember, Snoke said if the Resistance finds Skywalker first, the new Jedi will rise, a.k.a. the Rise of Skywalker. JJ is finishing what he started, and with what Ryan gave him as a continuity, probably made a few things change, but he knows how to twist a tale, so to speak, and I can hardly wait to see what we get from him. Great show, John. Yeah, I like the theory. I will say, obviously, as I've mentioned a lot on the show, we're going to get Reylo in some way, shape, or form, and I almost guarantee at this point that we're getting some kind of Bendemption. Especially with the announcement of that comic book, The Rise of Kylo Ren. I think that's kind of a play off of The Rise of Skywalker, but we'll save that for other podcasts. All right, Alex writes this. A worrying amount of people don't seem to know that characters change over time, like Luke's change from Return to the Jedi to The Last Jedi. I am sure that Kylo Ben has changed from The Last Jedi to The Rise of Skywalker. Short and sweet. Alex, I like it. Mike the Warlock says this. It's like poetry, it rhymes. Most of the people who complain remember those words from George Lucas until they realize that the story being told doesn't fit their own narrative and headcanon. That is a really great point, Mike. Thank you. All right, Ness95 says this. I believe the Sith Troopers will work with Palpatine. In the Rise of Skywalker teaser, we see Kylo Ren possibly fighting a Knight of Ren alongside the white normal stormtroopers. It could possibly be edited, but I truly believe Kylo won't go that far from the dark side as to become a Sith. Always love your podcast. Look forward to hearing your thoughts and theories. Yeah, I do think there's something to this idea that those Sith Troopers answer to Kylo Ren because he's Supreme Leader, but ultimately they'll answer to Palpatine. Okay, I think you can kind of do both. All right, Kimmy Skywalker writes this. I had a friend who said Snoke was smoke and mirrors and that they would end up being like the Wizard of Oz. He said this way back in 2015. Fast forward, and the first thing my friend said after watching The Last Jedi was, "See, I told you." He was referring to Snoke being killed and how Snoke wasn't all he seemed. I'm starting to think that right now. Much doesn't make sense with this trilogy, but after The Rise of Skywalker, we are all going to go back and watch The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi and be able to connect the dots. I don't have any huge revelations. I just think things will come together with the simple ideas as fans made complex, because let's face it, crazy fan theories and speculation is what Star Wars fans do best. Tell me about it. I've done some 200 some odd podcasts doing that. At the end of the day, I will go down with this Reylo ship like Leo went down with the Titanic. Love your podcast. So glad I found you and subscribed. I just watched Titanic for the first time in I don't know how long. There was a fantastic documentary hosted by James Cameron about the making of the film and talking about everything they've learned since he made the movie and what he got right and what he got wrong in the film. So, as my cold started to kick in, I sat down and I watched Titanic. Man, if this 47-year-old didn't tear up like multiple times during that movie, James Cameron, man, I swear. That dude. Still a great movie. So gut-wrenching. Oh, never let go. All right. Barmag writes this. I always saw Snoke using Hux to lead the First Order and Kylo Ren in charge of everything Force and Luke Skywalker related. He had no interest in the two of them getting along and working together, so I never really saw Kylo Ren as a political leader kind of guy. The haggard look after the throne room battle was kind of like him realizing that he could lead, but not that it was something that he wanted to actively do before that moment. So him having commissioned a clone army, even if he mentioned in The Force Awakens, doesn't really ring true to me. Okay, it's interesting. I think the mention in TFA was to remind the audience of the clone army, and also that Kylo Ren knew his history and history with a big H. With a big H. He is not an idiot or an uneducated guy. Sure, if there's a 5-year gap, yeah, I can see Kylo Ren ordering a clone army, faithful to him, because he doesn't trust Hux and the First Order to remain loyal to him. But if there's only a 1-year gap, it's possible the Sith Troopers are the enemy, and the Knights of Ren alert Kylo Ren of, and they later discover that they answer to Palpatine, who is alive somehow and wants to recreate his empire. Don't you think strange that it's revealed that they answer to Kylo Ren? It's a huge spoiler. Shouldn't it be better kept who they work for a secret, or maybe it's a misdirection? Okay, and again, to that is a leak. So that has never been publicly stated. That is a leak from MakingStarWars.net. That they got from multiple sources, that the Sith Troopers do answer exclusively to Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren. So what the connection there is, I don't know, but getting back to your point, that wasn't something that was officially put out there for anybody. All right. Carla says this. The negativity last week was my fault. I went on vacation to Bryce's Canyon, so I wasn't sitting in my traditional lotus position on a rock on Octo, sending out positivity to the galaxy. Promise to do better this week. Love you, dude. Carla Joe. That's funny. Thank you, Carla. Let's see. Anthea Gaia. Great show again this week regarding Sith Troopers. I did also see some of the negativity online, and I just don't understand it. I think they look totally awesome. My first thought is that they are red like the Praetorian Guard. See, I got that right. That time right? And the Emperor's Guards in the old trilogy because they serve the leader of the First Order or potentially Palpatine. Love their weapons. Does remind me of the Praetorian Guard weapons. Since they are called Sith Troopers, I can't help but feel that they would be commanded by Palpatine. I have a hard time with the idea that they now know Kylo would go calling himself a Sith after what he said to Rey. I think he wants to be something different, but of course I could be completely wrong. One problem I have with them being clones is how would Kylo possibly have been planning a clone army all along, even if there is a longer than 1 year gap. Wouldn't be enough time to grow an army of clones unless it was originally Snoke's idea and then Kylo takes it over. I can see it possible, though, that Palpatine was growing his army, and that's what I think may have happened. Palpatine was growing his army in the shadows as part of his contingency since he had done this before. It's kind of his M.O. Also, we have a scene with Kylo fighting with white armor First Order troopers in the trailers that leads me to believe that maybe they aren't his army. Though MakingStarWars.net did say they were commanded by Kylo and the Knights of Ren, so who knows? Yeah, that's my speculation, is that they could potentially be a clone army that's been sitting out there for a while, created by Palpatine as part of Operation Cinder, and they come back with the Knights of Ren when they show up from the beyond. Simone says this. John, I always love to hear your commentary. Thank you, Simone. Appreciate that. Look forward to it every weekend. Thank you again. It was so fun to hear how excited you were about the Sith Trooper. I liked the different theories and quotes you pulled up. I was thinking they would be associated with Palpatine, but I'm not sure how that would work. When you first brought up them being associated with Kylo, I didn't like it because I'm not sure he needs to go darker in this film, but you sold me on it a bit. Boy, that really was a controversial issue, wasn't it? Thank you, Simone. Appreciate that. Normal Girl, CVCO, says this. You were so excited about being international, I have to tell you, I listened to your show from Ecuador, South America. I'm waiting to be on college break to buy your book. Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'll be talking a little bit about the end of the show, but thank you very much. Normal Girl CVCO from Ecuador. Wow, it's crazy. All right. Anna writes this. Okay, so what you're implying is that Kylo ultimately goes full dark side, becomes a Sith, and dies evil? Yay, what a great ending. Not. Please let this theory go away. The whole saga cannot end in this dark tragedy. I never said that. I actually commented to this when it popped up earlier this week. I never said that. No, what I think I said last week was Kylo Ren embraces the dark side further, not necessarily going full Sith, but further because Rey rejects him. He is pissed off at the end of The Last Jedi. Blow that piece of junk out of the sky. I want every gun we have to fire on that man. I will kill you and her, and when I do, I will have killed the last Jedi. He wants to just get rid of everything. Okay, so, again, I and in no way, shape, or form am I saying he's dying evil, unless it's a means of sacrifice to bring about Ben's redemption via the same thing that happened in Beauty and the Beast. So, and I'm sorry if you heard what I said and took that away from it. That wasn't what I meant. So don't freak out. I'm still on Reylo. Okay, so I just had a thought, writes Star Lover. What if Palpatine, not sure how to spell it, is the reason Leia dies? I don't know why my voice cracked, probably because I'm sick. After her death, Ben shows up to Rey, Finn, and Poe and tells them he needs their help to defend Palpatine. Rey, Finn, and Poe begin arguing about what to do, and Poe makes the comment about losing their general, and Ben says, "You may have lost the general, but I lost my mother. I got cheers thinking about it." And that would be interesting. All right, one more for this week. Kayla writes this. I myself have said for a year that Kylo Ren and Rey will become the Rise of Skywalker after the end scene inside. Rise of Skywalker after the end scene inside that if, and I say if, they both live, then after they win the next Order of the Jedi, like, boy, this is really, hold on a second here. Let me try to get wrap my head around what's being written here. Okay, so I paused the show and had to read through just because it was tough to read, Kayla, no offense. I think what you're driving at is that Kylo Ren come together, and after the end of the film, they won't be Jedi anymore, they will be Skywalker, as in sort of like gray Force users. A combination and a balance of both, okay? So this the individual writing this is Michael, he's on his wife's YouTube account. Okay, so this makes a little more sense. I think Kylo knows that Palpatine is alive and wanted to show he was a Sith to prove to Snoke and Palpatine that he has no light left, right? Because in the first Star Wars, The Force Awakens, he says to Vader's helmet, "I'll finish what you started," okay? Meaning he'll finish what you started by killing Palpatine and Snoke, just a theory, but I think it would be cool in that way. Okay. Yeah, I know a lot of people have run with this idea that the Rise of Skywalker is going to be sort of this new label for the Jedi. I'm more of the opinion that the Rise of Skywalker is going to end up having multiple meanings in the film. All right, I got to wrap it up because I am tired because I'm not feeling well. And that was a longer episode that I intended on recording this week. Once again, just a quick update. Like I mentioned at the start of the show, if you're not on the mailing list for My Nerd World and you want updates on either the podcast or on my science fiction novels, and there's some really interesting stuff that I'll be putting out to the mailing list alone, including when it'll first be on sale, how you can get it earlier than everybody else at a cheaper price. Just email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com, and say, hey, put me on the email list. That's all you got to do. If you want to leave a comment on YouTube and say the same thing, just make sure you leave me your email address. Say, put me on your mailing list. I will not use it for spam. You can pick up the first book at Amazon.com right now. Embark Book 2, Embark Treasure in Darkness, is at the proofreaders as I am talking. As soon as I get it back, I will approve the corrections, and then we'll move to publication. So the second book in my series should be out within the next 4 weeks. I'm in the process of editing the audiobook, which is completely recorded right now. If you want to support my Nerd World and a Star Wars podcast, please go out and purchase a copy of my first book in the trilogy series and what is going to be a lengthy series of books by going to Amazon.com and searching for Embark and Jon Justice. The story goes as follows. For Earth, the end is near. Only a reluctant hero and the girl he loves have the power to save humanity and the future. Our hero, Taft, and the girl he loves, Katha, along with their friends, uncover a shocking secret as the planet is on the brink of an industrial apocalypse in the future. This is a future where car culture has been replaced by air and space flight made possible by two of Earth's largest corporations. Sint Argum is a corporate madman who has created a covert military and is trying to exploit the disaster on Earth, and only Taft and Katha, with the help of a ragtag group of young adults, can fight for humanity's future and survival among the stars. The reviews for Embark have been fantastic. Support the show by going to Amazon right now and picking up a copy for either you or your friend in ebook, paperback, or audiobook at Amazon.com. It would just mean the world to me. If you have purchased it, as always, thank you so much for doing so. I really appreciate it. If you've read it and liked it and haven't left a review, go to Amazon.com and leave a review. That would really help me out as well. And again, get the book before the next book comes out in the next 4 weeks. Super excited, and don't want you to be spoiled by reading the blurb for the next book without reading the first book, so go get it now at Amazon.com. All right, that's it for the show this week. I'm going to go rest because I'm tired, because I'm not feeling well, but I powered through it, and thank you so much for enduring me and this podcast for being sick this week. We will be back again next week, and hopefully maybe even have some more information from San Diego Comic-Con to talk about. So until then, here is Obi-Wan Kenobi to tell you those very, very important words. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My nerd world.